Marc Lemchen, New York City, New York. Um, Actually, it's a circuitous path. I track it all back to I have an older sister who's a genius person, the ultimate student. So, of course, I took the other course. Um, and I think my parents were worried that I would never do anything. So they told me I had to take a vocational test when I was 17. It was a Saturday. I said, I don't want to go take a test on Saturday. They played the ultimate card. They said, we bought you a car. The least you can do is take the test. So I took this test and it came out that I should be an airline pilot. At which point my mother said, you were right. That was a stupid test. Be a dentist. So then that went on the back burner. I went to a small all-male college. It wasn't really for me. And I wanted to leave there after 3 years. And I said I could go to dental school after 3 years. So I went to, another side story is that my father also was worried I couldn't focus on things enough. So let me turn off my little intercom, which makes beeps like that, drives people crazy. And so my sister was very strong-willed, and I would always say, whatever you want, you know. So my father said, I met one of our guys that works for us, stopped smoking by using a hypnotist. You should talk to this guy. So it happened he had an agent in the town I was going to college in. So I spoke to this guy, and he spent an hour with me. He did all the standard tests that we always know are kind of phony, like you put a vitamin in someone's hand, you push their arm down, look how much resistance there is, and you put a piece of sugar in there, look, no resistance. And he said, oh, you're a good candidate. And he taught me to count backwards from 20, concentrate for 20 minutes, then count forward, rest for 5. And I applied it to organic chemistry, and I literally did not get one answer wrong in organic chemistry all year. And that was a 5-credit course, a 4-credit course. It's 5-credit course, I think, because it had a lab. And I think that got me into dental school. The funny thing about it, he went on to become a very famous hypnotist who just died recently, but he was always in Las Vegas. He's called the Amazing Kreskin. So I always say the most amazing thing about Kreskin is he taught me how to do this. And every once in a while I still apply it. But that's how, so anyway, that was that. So I went to dental school. I went to Tufts, which I loved Tufts. And I always thought they were a school that was committed to making your 4 years there the best they could possibly be. So I remained very active at Tufts. And then it was during Vietnam, so we didn't want to go to Vietnam, so we signed up to join the Air Force. The Air Force sent me to Japan. So I spent 2 years in Japan, and because I was from the Northeast and I was a little more liberal than most people in the military, well, not most of the medical dental corps, but most career people, they sent me to the school to take care of the kids. So I did pedo essentially for 2 years. We built a really amazing clinic that these women who were flight attendants painted these Snoopy characters. The most professional thing you ever saw. I mean, if I have pictures of it, it looks like somebody was a real artist did them. And I had a lot of fun with the kids, but I didn't want to go back and do what I'd been doing for 2 years, take a program. So I went back to ortho, thinking I would never see adults and I'd never have to go into the hospital, both of which ended up being incorrect because practicing in New York City, you had an immediate influx of young adult patients, and it was the beginning of orthodontic surgery. So I got very involved with the orthodontic surgeon in New York, and that's how I ended up being a dentist. Well, I think it's a unique combination of three-dimensional imaging, because you have to move things in 3 dimensions, mechanical engineering, because you have to know how to move them. And most important, I think, when you go back to, it's built on relationships. And I like to quote my friend Lloyd Blankfein, who ran Goldman Sachs for many years, made it very successful. And he would always have plenty of time to talk to you. And I'd have to say, Lloyd, I got to go back to work. And so I said, how do you have all this time? You're supposed to be running a huge business. He says, Mark, he said, in our business, you can do the same deal with anybody. You're going to do with people you like. Relationships are everything, which I've always believed, but this sort of cemented it in my mind that he's right, that relationships are everything. And I really think it's something we should start teaching kids in first grade, and that it might help the world to push that idea. Well, I think that I've spent a lot of years talking to people about Darwin and that natural selection, and that we have this innate knowledge of that what's healthy, and we interpret that as being cosmetic. And so I'm sort of against the concept of orthodontics being cosmetic. It's cosmetic because it's healthy. So for many years, I've explained this to people. Health is beauty, beauty is health. But I saw recently on a plane going back and forth somewhere, the Enzo Ferrari movie. And Enzo Ferrari said it best. And I cannot find that he really said this. That's a caveat here. But in the movie, he looks at his son and he says, if it looks good, it works better. I think that should be the tagline for orthodontics. If it looks good, it works better. And it's true. So if you show somebody one side of their mouth that's class 2 and the other side is class 1, you say, which one looks better? They know. So it justifies or makes it clearer for people what we're really trying to do. It happens to look better, but we're really doing it because it's healthy. I like coming up with new ideas and new things, and we've done lots of things in general. One of my favorite things that I developed was a device actually for boats. It's called a moving propeller alert that I developed because I thought the engines were getting so quiet. People, if they're in the water around a boat that can start and stop and hold its position, they wouldn't know the engine's running. And I got a call one day, and the assistant said to me, there's a Mr. Bass on the phone for you, which sort of sounded very boat-like. It turns out I think he's now the CEO of Mercury Marine, and they had this idea, but they found out that I'd already done it, so they licensed that from me. So now I like to go to the boat shows and see my little device on the back of boats. And actually, they had a different use for it, that people like to hang out on their swim platforms of boats. And if the engine's running, they die of carbon monoxide. And it was enough of an issue that they felt this was an important thing to have. So I only get $1 for each one. but it's fun to see it. And it's outside of my field, so, it's something different. It's hard to differentiate between difficult case and difficult patient. We have a couple of cases where I would say are remarkable examples of compliance. That you look at this and think nothing would fix it, but you have 100% compliance from this patient, and it becomes an easy project. But certainly, I think I share with everybody else that horrible deep bite class 2 cases, are difficult. The kids are biting on the brackets and chipping their teeth and wearing their teeth down. And if it's in poor hygiene and poor cooperation, it makes it more difficult. And it's hard because you really should be on top of those cases, and every once in a while you're not, and they sort of slip through the cracks until somebody says, what's happening to those front teeth? And you wish you go back and start again. That was an interesting question. I like that. So I came up with a lot of things, practice management systems. Well, when we started practicing, there were no computers, right? And then we got our first computers, and we had our first computer treatment card in 1982, which was way early. In fact, only one company made them, and when we switched over to OrthoTrack, the deal was they had to make us a treatment card. And I think it changes. It puts a third party in the practice, the computer. I was like the story. had a difficult patient one day, and the mother comes in, why isn't he done? What's taking so long? And I, knowing better, but doing the wrong thing anyway, I said in the middle of an afternoon, well, he doesn't brush his teeth, he doesn't keep his appointments, he breaks his brackets, and he doesn't wear elastics. And she said, that's not true. And I said, well, maybe you're right, because I thought I caught my mistake there. I said, I'm going to go over the record, and maybe you'll come in and look at it with me. Well, she was there the next morning at 10 o'clock with the kid. And I'd taken the treatment card, printed it out, highlighted the missed appointments, broken brackets. I said, oh, no, I looked at the chart, and this is what I found. And the little boy said, that's not true. And the mother said, you be quiet, the computer doesn't lie. So having that third party, and of course we're seeing that with them monitoring, the third party is often a big help. Imaging, of course, when we started dolphin imaging, there was no such thing as a digital camera. We had to use a video camera and grab a frame. And people said, you'll never replace slides. Never replace slides. And of course, we know the rest is history with that. Lingual brackets, my experience with that was a phenomenal experience helping to develop them with Ormco. That taught us a lot. We're now very involved with robotics. We love that. But if the one thing that's always interesting about orthodontics is the three-dimensional factors. And so the cone beam scans, being able to see things in 3 dimensions, is amazing, and in a way that patients can understand it. If you have a patient where the mother's a set designer or something, she thinks in 3 dimensions, but most people don't. So I think that's been a great advance for us to be able to explain things and show things in general. And of course scanners. So we started using a scanner from SureSmile, which was the first scanner really available. We used to have to paint the teeth white, and it would take an hour. And we actually did the first 9 scans that were made into aligners, working with Invisalign. And out of those 9 scans, they liked 6 of them better than the impressions. We did both. And so, in a way, that was the beginning of a whole thing using scanners for aligners, and that's when they went out and acquired OrthoCAD and Avi Kopelman's iTero scanner. Well, that's an easy question because everybody will come up with the same answer immediately. It's going to be AI. So when we have the equivalent of the IBM Watson computer, which plays chess and tries out 3 million different moves in a nanosecond to see which one's going to turn out best, it's hard not to think that's eventually not going to apply to orthodontics, where we can have, we can talk to 3 different orthodontists and get 9 different ways of treating the case. And there probably is one that's best, but you can't figure everything into it. So I think AI is going to be a big factor. And I know it's going to be something that in some ways is going to scare people. But it's always going to be who uses the tool best, whether it was the first calculator, the first computer, it's who uses that tool the best. So I think we're gonna see that. I always thought it was a great publication. It's clinically oriented, which is a little easier to read and look at and take things from. It always has a great cover. And when you look back at the covers, I'm sure you see the evolution of technology and treatment modalities in orthodontics. I think we were lucky enough to be on the cover once or twice. Not my practice. The people that have been involved in it have always been great clinicians.
And so then how did you start on the board after that?
Well, I think they asked me. Obviously I've done a lot with technology, so they asked me to look at some articles. I was happy to do that. And it's interesting looking at seeing things before they're published. So that's always fun. So I've enjoyed that opportunity. It's sort of my window on the world, in a with a rational, logical, trusted filter, because there's so many new things out all the time, and you can go crazy trying everything, and never know what really works because you never give it enough chance to work. So I've liked that part of it, and the other thing I've sort of pushed in technology is that technology has to be accepted by your staff and used for every patient. Example of only 2 people know how to scan in the office, and they're busy, so let's just take an impression. Doesn't work. So I think the JCOs have been a good publication to show people that you use these things on every patient that comes in, not just selected or when you have time or isn't it a neat gadget. Well, I think I'll go back to that same answer. It means that the profession has a benchmark, something to look at. That what are the most, if it gets in a JCO, it's a technology or a concept or a treatment concept that's being used. And it's not just showing up in one office, because everything works sometimes. I think orthodontics has an unpredictable element. The case you're sure is going to be surgical might not be. And if you only have one case that you see, or you never hear about it anywhere else, you're not even sure you want to use it again. So I think it's the same. It's a clinical journal. It's for the wet-fingered orthodontist. It's not what you read in dental school necessarily, although they should. Well, social media is certainly a phenomenon, and it's had lots of benefits, I'm sure, but it's got lots of difficult parts, particularly if you don't really think about it a lot. So, everybody's life is not a Facebook life, and somehow you think it is. So we think everybody's always smiling, having a good time, going to the beach. But really all of our lives are quite similar and have certainly a little bit of everything in them. So I think that, I've been a member of a couple of groups that have big threads that go back and forth. Again, you're appealing to a huge market when you have a huge thread that's covering hundreds and hundreds of offices, and it's a taste, but it's not validated. So I think that the publication is, you're more willing to share it with a larger number of people in reality, and social media. It's a little bit of a theatrical production. And we all know that we can take pictures in one way that they look better than another, and we're going to take those pictures in the best possible way and post those cases. It's like the old thing about root resorption. They said the only people that never had root resorption on a patient are the ones that never took an x-ray. So you're not going to publish root resorption on Facebook. That is a hard question because it's been so many years and so many things. I've followed carefully the concept of using TADs and MARPIs and how they've been applied and the results people have gotten with them. I think it's always, to me, it's always been the new technology, And it's interesting because some things are more accepted by certain patient populations than they would be by others. Some people are going to do whatever the orthodontist tells them to do, and others are going to tell you what to do. There's an interesting study that VIP patients get actually less good care than regular patients because we're always we're more likely to bend our thoughts to their desires. But, it's, you still have to listen to the patient. Because you don't want to miss an issue. And it's the only way of really seeing it and getting it. And when it's on your desk, you're more likely to say, I got to look through this before you can put it on the shelf. So I looked at that question that she gave me. I said, buy real estate. There's a joke. It says, show me somebody who doesn't say they couldn't have bought that building for $9. And of course, living in New York City, I walked down the street. I said, that building was $1 million. Now it's $100 million. I've lived long enough to see all those things. So that's one area. I think that I love orthodontics and I love the things we've done with the orthodontic profession, but it's really a relatively small market. Some of the things we've done, like I think Anywhere Dolphin was basically Facebook for dentists. If we'd given it to our patients instead of orthodontists, it would have been a different plan. And facial predictions that we've done since 1988, if we gave it to kids and let them give their teacher a third eye, it would have been a bigger seller to a huger market. So those are things that have flown by, but I've had a good time in what we've developed for orthodontics. And the other side of it is a small community. We know everybody, and we've known everybody for a long time. I think it goes back to listening to your patients, building a relationship with those patients so that no matter what you do, they know you did the best. And also being willing. I never leave a kid without saying, you have any questions? I tell them I like questions. I think Zoom has been we always did a number of online consultations because we had patients like from really long distances. But after COVID, we do most of our presentations on Zoom, which brings up another little favorite thing that maybe this is a pro as well, that Dr. Salzer, Jen Salzer, Andrew, my son, we do all our own case presentations. So we spend a half an hour with that patient reviewing the case and the records. And that half an hour is paid back to you in not only referrals, but differentiating your practice, but avoiding thousands of questions if you never really addressed it. And I respect and love all the treatment coordinators, but nobody can really present the case as well as the orthodontist. And the other thing the orthodontist has the ability to do is to be fast on their feet. It's something I would always tell the residents. Look at a patient when you're telling them something. You'll know before they tell you that they're not going to accept extractions. You'll see it in their face. And you say, and that way you have the option, if it's valid, of saying, we could start without taking teeth out. And they think, oh, that makes me feel so much better. They don't think you know, but if you're watching them, you'll know. So read your patient, which is true in life in general. Read the people you're talking to. Don't go on talking to them if you see their face is already telling you that they're not happy with you, don't like what they heard, it's too expensive, too cheap, So I think that's advice there. And don't be so determined to win the battle that you lose the war. You're never going to convince anybody that you're wrong. So take the easy road. Now, that's part of me. I'm non-confrontational. So maybe I do it for that reason, but for me, it works better. So if the best example of that is a very difficult patient. I got a call must have been like 2:00 on a Saturday night. I know the father must have come home after having a few too many drinks, and his daughter must have said, my wire's poking. So the rational thing is come in the morning or come Monday morning or put cotton on it. I knew it was not going to work. So I said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. I put my pants on, went to the office, cut the wire, and end the discussion. And I didn't have to deal with an angry parent. I didn't have to deal with a problem on Monday morning. And, I got a few stars for that. And I think that's, the concept of being a pathological accommodator is not a sin. It's sometimes creates a better relationship, or it creates a better result, or it saves you aggravation. So purely selfishly for me, I don't want to deal with the confrontation. I just fine, whatever makes you happy. If I can do it, I'm going to do it. I always like this question. Take out a big loan. Because when you borrow the money to build an office and build a practice, you're not going to sit there waiting for the next patient to come. You have to go to every meeting. You have to go out and meet people. You have to go out of your way to build a practice. The driving factor is going to be when you know you have to make the loan payment, you're going to make sure I would think you'd make sure you go out and build that practice. So I think my favorite clinical pearl is that when we are ready to take the braces off a patient, we've already scanned and we've made the bonded linguals. I look at those 6 anterior teeth and I open the doors on the brackets and I use an optical plier and I put little offsets in for any tiny little discrepancy that you might let go by because it's really fine. And you can make the most minimal little adjustments in it because that's about the wiggle room you have. And then you close those doors and in 3 seconds, the teeth are absolutely perfectly straight. And you put your bonded lingual in place and that holds them there. And I've had funny things happen, like where one woman said, "You've been working for 4 months to move that tooth, and you just moved it in 2 seconds." Because every time you moved it and you took it out, the tooth would go back. So that would be my favorite clinical pearl. And it goes along with some things that you do that you think you might be the only person doing. And one of my favorite friends, one time is Jim Hilders. And I remember sitting there in a lecture where he said he uses an optical plier to go in and make finishing bends. And I said, yes. And he also said, and even when we take teeth out, we do expanders. And I said, yes. And expanders, I think, are the most amazing appliance because it's the most predictable, non-surgical change we can achieve. And I think it's still, to this date, underappreciated how much it does.